Welcome back to Heart of the Home, and now we're going to learn the secrets of mastering an apple pie. And the secret is, there's no secret. Here's what you'll need. We're going to start with 2 cups of flour, all-purpose flour, and add 1 teaspoon of salt, and we'll mix that well. Then we will add 2/3 of a cup of shortening, and I prefer to use shortening, not butter. I think shortening gives you a consistency each time you make the pie that is better than always using butter and not knowing what you're going to get. For the sake of time, I have already combined one so that we can see. And this is the consistency that you should work your shortening into the flour. I prefer to work with a plain old fork. You can buy a pastry cutter, which is a U-shaped wire object with a handle that cuts the shortening into the flour, but this fork has served me well for years. So you work until it is crumbly like this, yet you can push it together and it will kind of form a little ball. See? Then at this point we will add 5 to 7 tablespoons of water. And with everything in cooking, you know it's very important to measure accurately. So what I do, it's important to use cold water, is just add enough. After you make enough pie crust, it becomes apparent when you've gotten to that point. So I'm being silly when I say you always need to measure. You do until you learn how much it takes. I like to have my pie crust be a little on the dry, crumbly side rather than a big, wet, massive ball. And just keep turning the bowl and working the dough. The reason that you want to use cold water and the reason you want to keep your hands off of the dough as much as possible is that what makes a flaky pie crust is having cold fat layered between the flour. Now we're ready to roll it out. This is the simplest part, and so many people are afraid of rolling out a pie crust or making a pie crust. You'll moisten your countertop, this is just a damp paper towel, and use plastic wrap. Put down a sheet, and the moisture holds it like glue. It won't move. Then you put half of your dough onto the plastic wrap. And when I make a pie crust, my hands never touch the pie crust. I like to say it's untouched by human hands. You can take that any way you want. Notice that I have the wrap between my hands and the dough. Then I grab my ever popular and faithful rolling pin, and I like to start on the outsides and kind of roll it in so that all of these edges are mushed together. That's a good technical word. And then just start rolling. If your wax paper gets kind of stuck or begins to roll over itself, just pull it up and put it back down. Then to determine if you have your crust large enough, you simply take your pie pan and invert it on top. Now this will need to be just a little bit bigger. You want to have enough of a overhang that you'll be able to seal the top to the bottom crust. This is the most difficult part, pulling off the plastic. Now this is fun. You invert the pie pan again on top of your crust. Slip your hand under the wax paper or the plastic wrap, and then just flip it over. Use your fingers, just push it down into the edges all the way around. Nothing to it. And it's very forgiving in that you can put it back together. And again, my hands haven't touched the pie crust. Now, another difficult part, pulling the paper off. Now we're going to add our apples, and this is about 6 or 7 cups of apples, pie apples like Granny Smith's. I like to have them mounded up high in the middle. I think it makes a prettier pie. And then I have combined ingredients to put on top of it. Now many people like to mix the apples with the topping for it before they put it in the pie shell, but the reason I do it this way is because it sometimes seems to give sort of a praline flavor on the bottom of the top crust, so I sprinkle it all over the top. just like this. And this has 1 cup of sugar, 3 tablespoons of flour, a teaspoon of cinnamon, a pinch of salt, and a pinch of nutmeg. Now, if you would like, you can also put about 2 tablespoons of butter, just pats of butter, on top of the pie at this time. Now we're going to make the top crust, and we're going to make the top crust exactly the way we did the bottom crust, using the same paper over again. You may have to re-moisten your counter. Use the paper to kind of keep it together, or the wrap. Nothing to it. It's gotten so that I would much prefer to make my pie crust than to buy a pie crust. In fact, I can honestly say I don't think I've ever purchased a pie crust, because to me it seems like it would take longer to do it. And here, I know what it's going to turn out like, and I don't know what those purchased ones are going to turn out like. This all becomes much easier the more you do it. The easier it becomes. Practice makes perfect. Not to say that this is perfect, but it becomes easier for you to do. You want to have your top crust overlap the bottom crust again, and then if you have a great excess, you'll need to trim it off. If you don't have very much excess, like this, what I do is turn the bottom crust up over the top crust, and I go all the way around the pie doing that. And then whenever I finish going all the way around the pie doing that, I will crimp the pie crust this way. This adds an additional way to secure the crust together so that it won't run out. Then the very last thing is to cut openings in the pie to allow the steam to escape. And apple pies are notorious for running over in your oven, so I always cook mine on a cookie sheet. Now I'll show you the finished project. I have one of those magic ovens just like they do on TV. And here we have, if I can slide that off, hot, fresh out of the oven, apple pie. I hope you've seen how easy it is, and now you'll be inspired to try it yourself. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Heart of the Home, and that if you have any comments, suggestions, or recipes, you write to us, care of Heart of the Home, Crew 6 TV, Harrison, Arkansas. And now, we're going to try some apple pie. And I hope that you'll feel inspired to do this yourself really soon, because it just comes out, as Mr. Food says, ooh, it's so good. Don't want to miss any of it.